Also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Then I said, "Here am I, send me." At this time, I will turn it over to Eli Barnes.
Wait. Make this a little taller. Happy Sabbath. So, oh wait, turn off the light too so they can see the pictures better. Let's pray. Dear Lord, please be with me and Emily and Lily as we speak today. Help your words to go through us and help us to not be nervous. And help us to adequately tell the story of what we did and show how much fun it was. Amen. So when we were traveling to Honduras, the day of, we had to wake up at 2:30 a.m. to be able to get there on time. When we woke up, we finished packing, and then we drove to Atlanta from Fletcher. It's about 3 hours. And went through security and everything, hopped on the plane. I had probably the most awkward seat in the whole plane because since my name is first alphabetically, I just sit beside two random people. But at least I got a window seat. So once we landed in San Pedro Sula, we drove in these cramped minivans, which the pictures are on there somewhere. And we drove 3 hours in those, and it's bad if you have long legs driving in those vans. And then we got to the Ogar, and the Ogar was the most fun part of the trip. Me and one of my friends, Jake, were starting that night and then going on through the rest of the trip, we were just surrounded by girls all the time because we have blonde hair and blue eyes, and that is not common there. But at the Ogar, there was VBS, and it would start with music, which was probably the most fun part because they did Father Abraham one night, and I just made the whole back laugh dancing to it. And then they'd have a little sermon with a Bible story, they did creation and Daniel in the lion's den and stuff like that. And then afterwards we'd have a craft. And then we weren't able to play with them after VBS because they had to go to bed at 6:30 because they woke up at 5:30 every morning to get ready for school and do their chores and everything. But on the weekends we would play tag with them, or what they would call landa. And all the American kids were targeted as they would tag us first. But I was probably tagged, I was the first one they picked because I had blonde hair and blue eyes. So the first night I had to just sprint for about 30 minutes straight. It's tiring. The meals there we would eat with the kids at night because they were at school the rest of the time. And they had really good food. That's my opinion. They don't like it. But they had really good food. They had tortillas with beans and cheese and sour cream in them, and they had empanadas, and they're these corn tortilla things with rice and potatoes in them. And I liked the meals. They didn't.
I liked some of them.
She liked some of the meals. And then when we weren't playing with them, or we're too tired or just eating, we would talk with the kids and as best we could since there was a language barrier. One night a girl was teaching me Spanish while I was teaching her English. So when they were at school during the day, we would go to the different schools, and they'll talk about some of them later, but I went to the Adventist high school the most. I went there 4 days out of the time that we were there. And we would teach English in the English department. And 5 minutes before we were supposed to teach it, or less, they'd tell us what we were going to teach. So we'd have to wing it when we taught. And the most fun was teaching slang because we could just goof off with them and show them the way that we talk in America. The food at the high school was also really good. They had this strawberry drink. It was almost like a strawberry milkshake, but it was strawberry Nesquik. And it was amazing. We'd also goof off with the kids while we were waiting for our bus to get there, like at the high school, because we'd finish about an hour before the bus would get there. So we'd play like games like where you flip your hand over and try to hit their hand. They have really fast reflexes. We play balancing games where we have to push the other person over and play tag. We'd also help them with their homework. And after we were done at the high school, we'd go back to the hogar and we'd eat lunch and then we'd paint all afternoon. And I did trimming, and they picked everyone that was trimming to go on Thursday and paint all day. So one day I had to paint all day, and it was really boring. But to make it more fun, me and some other people, we painted a mural on the wall. So, and then they painted over it. But we painted 6 rooms, 1 wall of a house, the exterior wall, and 4 hallways. And the saddest part of the trip was probably leaving the kids, because they were all crying, and like a lot of us were crying. It was really hard and emotional when we left. But going back was basically the same. We got back past midnight, and we had school the next day, so we had to wake up pretty early. But the biggest thing I got from this trip is to don't take things we have for granted in America. Because all around the hogar, it was cartel land. And that's the reason that Santa Barbara is so safe, is because the cartels keep the crime out so the police don't come and take their drugs. There was also a big fence around the hogar with razor wire on it, and that was to protect the kids from people coming in. So I just learned, don't take our protection that we have in America for granted, because it's much more unstable in other countries. The sewer lines there are much smaller. They're 2 inches in diameter instead of 4, so you can't flush the toilet paper. And the drinking water, you have to purify all of it. And when we took showers and brushed our teeth, we couldn't use the water that they had in the hogar because it had been tested positive for E. coli. So the point I want to bring to you is just don't take for granted what we have in America, because it's not the same in other countries.
Happy Sabbath. So I didn't get my notes printed off, so I'm just going to use the laptop. After we ate our first breakfast in Honduras, Mr. Bass, the mission trip leader, had us choose between 2 places to work, the elementary school and the high school. I chose the elementary school because, as you probably noticed, I really enjoy playing with kids. Little kids. As I walked down the little dirt path towards the elementary school, I wondered what I would be doing to help out. I mean, teach English, but how? So, as soon as we arrived at the school, I walked over to some little girls. Okay, maybe I was the only one, but the first day or so that I was there, I was terrified to talk in Spanish. I mean, what if I said the wrong thing? The kids would laugh. Or what if they couldn't understand me because of my broken Spanish? So I cautiously said the expected words, hola, and ¿cómo te llamas? And me llamo es Emily, and then just stood there awkwardly. What else was I supposed to say? How about, ¿cuál es tu color favorita? No, okay, seriously, what teenager in her right mind walks up to total strangers and says, hello, what is your favorite color? Well, apparently I wasn't in my right mind because I did it anyways. A little bit later, a girl ran up to me and started speaking in Spanish. Obviously, I didn't understand her, but I did catch the words jugar, play, and pelota, ball. Soon I was playing some sort of dodgeball, and I won the game. Who cares that I probably cheated like 100 times while trying to figure it out? All the kids gathered around me and cheered. I was like, bueno? Because I wasn't actually sure that I'd won. They're like, sí, bueno. After about 30 minutes of this, I got called to help teach 4th grade with Laura, a friend of mine from Fletcher. Unfortunately, Laura knew about the same amount of Spanish as I did. Even worse, the 4th grade teacher knew probably less English than we knew Spanish. I looked at Laura and said, this is going to be interesting. After introducing ourselves to the class in broken Spanish, we decided to point to different objects in the classroom and ask them how to say it in English. I was surprised. They knew a lot more than I expected. Sorry. The teacher then projected some pictures on the whiteboard/screen and had us write next to the pictures what they were called in English and then say it out loud to the kids. They would repeat it a few times and then they would teach us how to say it in Spanish. Once we finished this, we were asked to sing some songs for them in English. So I guess Laura and I officially became the music teachers also. Soon it was time for math class, so the kids pointed to a desk and told me to sit down. The kid in the desk in front of me, whom I later found out was named Brandon, handed me his art notebook and pens and told me to draw a picture. Before I knew it, I had a whole stack of notebooks to draw pictures in. Then a little boy named Orlando gave me a pen. This was a real sacrifice because everyone was so poor. Some kids even had their names written on their pens to make sure they didn't get stolen. After that, kids started pulling out their sticker books and giving me stickers. Soon I had probably 15 or so stickers all over my shirt. The rest of the morning went by pretty quick, and soon it was time to leave. As I walked out of the classroom, kids handed me drawings that they had made for me. Like this right here. And this. And then this one said goodbye, I love you, or something like that. So I thought that was really sweet. Anyways, a few days later, I got the opportunity to do dental work at the orphanage. Honestly, I didn't really expect that I would do much, mostly just hold the tray for the dentist and then hand them tools. But when we finished setting up our makeshift clinic, one of the dentists, Dr. Yoon, pulled out the fancy dentist toothbrush and taught us how to polish teeth and put on fluoride. I really enjoyed doing the teeth. I'd sit a little kid down in a chair, go, ah, so they'd open their mouths and then clean away. It was quite fascinating, and also I felt pretty professional using that cool brush. It was also fun putting on the fluoride. Some of the kids were ticklish and would giggle and giggle as I put it on their teeth. A few of the kids had to get their teeth pulled, and boy did they scream. I got the chance to try comforting a few kids by squeezing their hand and talking to them, but I don't think it really helped calm them down. After cleaning maybe 60 or so kids' teeth, we were done. We packed up our equipment and then stopped at a local store where Dr. Yoon bought us ice cream. Yum. That was really good. The next day, I went to the elementary school. I honestly had no choice because after I had left the elementary school the first day, I realized I had accidentally stolen Brandon's pen. I felt awful because for all I knew, that was his only pen. But before I went back to the 4th grade class, I played more games of that funny version of dodgeball. While resting for a moment, a little boy handed me a package of marshmallow cookies that most likely he'd bought with his own money. I thought it was so sweet that a kid, as far as I knew, who was quite poor, bought me that. Anyways, as I looked at him, I was like, wait, I think that's Brandon, the boy I stole the pen from. So I said, Brandon? He just grinned at me. So I asked him again, "Tu eres Brandon?" He just still grinned at me, but I felt so certain it was him that I handed him the pen, along with a highlighter as a consolation prize. His eyes lit up, and he said, "Thank you," so excitedly. You'd think I'd given him the latest iPhone or something. All of his classmates looked at me disappointed. They crowded around us, crying out words in Spanish, and then asking me where theirs was. Right around then, I panicked. Maybe it wasn't Brandon, so I asked the little boy again, "Tu eres Brandon?" And he finally understood. "I'm Orlando. Brandon's coming tomorrow," he said. What had I done? I guess the teacher heard the commotion because he came out to us right about then. I asked the little boy to give the pen and highlighter back to me, explaining that they were Brandon's. I felt awful, but I had to do it. I gave the teacher the pens and told him to give them to Brandon tomorrow. Orlando was very forgiving and acted as though it hadn't happened at all. He talked with me the rest of the day and never mentioned the pen again. This meant a lot to me because I knew I would have been upset if someone would have given me a cool toy and then told me to give it back. The next day I did dental again, this time way up on top of a mountain. At about 7 in the morning, a guy drove up to our house in a pickup truck ready to haul us up the mountain. Dr. Yoon panicked. "How are we going to fit 15 of us into a pickup truck along with all of that dental supplies?" he asked. The truck driver spoke to us through an interpreter. Why can't you take up one of the vans with us too? It's only like 30 minutes down the road." Soon we were on our way up the mountain. An hour later, we made it to the top and unloaded our supplies. So much for 30 minutes. Soon enough, we had our clinic set up. This day, we were going to do mostly extractions. It was so interesting watching as the dentist pulled teeth. Dr. Van Bukering, the other dentist, let Lily and I both pull teeth too. Once the extractions were finished, we polished teeth. The problem was the professional toothbrush needed to be charged, so instead we polished teeth with a regular toothbrush. It seemed silly since they could have been doing it themselves, but they seemed to appreciate it, so. After a long day of working, we packed everything up and loaded the pickup and van. This time, Lily and I, along with the other 3 kids, rode back on the pickup home. As you heard from the children's story, that was an adventure. The next day, I went to the Christian school. This was a K-12 non-Adventist school in downtown Santa Barbara. During the first hour or so, we made our way throughout several lower grade classrooms. But we soon got tired of this, so we decided to play soccer. The Hondurans are really good at playing soccer. I mean, really good. Like, the little 8-year-olds are better than me, which doesn't really say much because I'm not good, but... So a bunch of girls wearing skirts and flip-flops decided to join a bunch of 8th or 9th grade guys in a game of soccer. Noticing that we didn't have proper shoes, they had compassion on us and took theirs off, leaving only their nice uniform socks on. The problem was the grass was that plastic artificial turf, and it was about noon. My feet were soon burning up, and I was having too much fun to quit. I pointed at my feet and complained to one of the guys on my team. He realized that my feet were hurting, pointed at the pile of shoes, and motioned for me to wear one. He was offering his own shoes to me. I turned him down, figuring they wouldn't fit, and also it seemed a little gross. But still, I thought that was very sweet of him. An hour or so later, once we got tired of playing soccer, we rested in the shade. I sat down on a table with a few mission trip kids and a local teenager. I was trying to practice my Spanish on him, but in the process succeeded in telling him that I was 40 years old instead of 14. You should have seen his face. So on this mission trip, the thing that impacted me the most wasn't the beautiful mountains or the thick jungle. It wasn't polishing the teeth of the cute little boys and girls, and it wasn't holding macaws at a bird sanctuary. It was the little orphan boys and girls. These kids weren't in contact with their parents. They had been abused, kidnapped, gone through so much more than I could care to ever go through. They only owned a few mismatched outfits and shared their room with at least 3 other kids. They didn't have a phone, they didn't have air conditioning, and yet they were probably some of the happiest kids I've ever met. How is this? To be honest, I'm not really sure. I know I wouldn't be too happy under those circumstances. Something that I've wondered, though, is that maybe it's because they have learned to rely on God for everything. The one thing I do know is that I cannot wait to see them again, if not next year, then in heaven.
Okay, so now that Eli and Emily have talked about the schools, I'm just kind of going to do a little bit of overview because I was able to go to all 3 of them. First, I'm going to talk about the elementary school. The kids there were so adorable and so sweet. They accepted us as we were, even though we weren't of their culture. They included us in many games of tag, soccer, hide and seek, and games that we really didn't know what they were, but they expected us to know. I personally taught in 5th and 6th grade the 2 days that I was there, and it was really cool. Both days, myself and the people that I taught with were able to teach them some English. They really liked English because they didn't have an English teacher at their school, so when people came to teach them English, they got really excited because they wanted to know it. We also sat in their classes and helped them with their homework as they needed and as we could understand. Needless to say, the kids were phenomenal, and even though there was a language barrier, we still grew close to them and were helped by the kids that knew English. They helped translate for us. So moving on to the Christian school, I went on a different day than Emily, and my group had some interesting experiences. We were split off into groups of 2 or 3 people, so me and 2 other girls went into the 1st grade classroom, because this is K through 12, so they have all the grades. So first we went into 1st grade and we taught them English, but they actually called the school the Christian American School. So they're learning English and Spanish, so we weren't able to teach them a lot because they're already learning English and we don't know that much Spanish. But it was still fun to be able to teach them because they were really excited to learn. Next, we went to the 6th grade class and taught them some pretty extensive math. Lastly, myself and another kid were sent into the 11th grade computer class, where we sat there because only 2 of them spoke English, and they interrogated us for an hour because they didn't have a teacher, and they thought it was so much fun, and we didn't really know what to do, so we sat there and tried to carry on a conversation with them. But in every situation, there's something interesting that may be a little out of our comfort zone, but it made us become comfortable in our situation because we had to just kind of adapt to what we were put into. Then the Adventist High School was also really cool. They're in Honduras. They don't have middle school. They just have the elementary school goes from kindergarten to 6th grade, and the high school is 7th through 12th grade. So at the high school, we made lots of friends, including a girl named Genesis. She's in 10th grade, and she really wants to come to Fletcher next year. She speaks perfect English, and she was able to help us with the English classes and teaching, and we really want to find a way to get her a scholarship because I think that Fletcher would be really good for her since she's already so good at English. But we spent most of the time teaching different grades English. They would just have us sit in the English room and send in different grades so that they could get used to carrying on conversations in English. We also went to the Bible classroom once, but they all spoke in Spanish, so it was kind of hard there. And then we also enjoyed the strawberry milkshakes at the cafeteria. That was a really good part of that. But all in all, I really enjoyed all the schools because the kids were really kind to us. They accepted that we weren't from their culture, and they had a passion to make us happy. We were really there to make them happy, to make their life easier, but they tried to do everything that they could to make us happy. So quickly, I'm going to talk about what we did on the 2 Sabbaths that we were there. The first Sabbath, we went to the local church, and many participated in the service by singing, telling the children's story, translating, or preaching like one of our college students did. Later that day, we hiked part of a mountain, which some of y'all know hiking is not my thing at all, especially when it's 95 degrees out, but it was cool. There was a lot of nice views. When we got close to the top, we were taken back a little ways to a small Adventist church that these men had built into the mountain so that their people in their village could go to church. I don't know how they did it. They dug out from the mountain and transported the supplies up there to build the church. And they aren't quite finished. We were able to go inside and to sing some songs with them and pray with them, but they want to try to finish it this summer, but the faith and determination that these people had to finish the church, to build the church in the first place, was extraordinary because building a church into a mountain is not easy at all. On the other Sabbath, instead of going to church, we got in our vans and we went 3 to 4 hours up the mountain to a remote village to pass out bags of food to the poorest of the poor. These people, their living conditions were so sad. Some of them had block houses, some of them, I wouldn't even call them houses, but it was really sad. But I felt good knowing that we took them about 2 weeks worth of food in these big bags and then a small bag of soap. So I felt good to be able to help them. But when I was doing this, the Matthew 25:40 came to mind, and the king will answer and say to them, "Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." Doing this for others was a great way to spend our Sabbath, but something that really neat happened after we ate lunch and sang songs. As we were preparing to leave, someone saw a little boy, and he looked like he didn't feel well. They just felt his head to see if he had a fever, and he was burning up. Apparently he'd had this fever for 3 or 4 days, and they were trying to help him, but they didn't really have the supplies to do so. So quickly our nurses got him into some cold water, cooled his fever off, and gave him some medicine. And after they cooled him down, our nurses gave his mother some medicine, told her how to use it, when to give it to him, all that, and went on their way. So when we got back that night, our dentist, Dr. Ian, said, I wonder why we drove all the way those 4 hours up to a mountain, because there's poor people all around. But he said, who knows, we could have saved that little boy's life, because when you have such a high fever for a certain amount of days, it will cause brain damage or whatever. And from what they were saying, he had it for several days, and it was still just as hot, and he was really sick. And so to think that they could have saved the little boy's life made it really worth it to drive those 8 hours to hand out food. Even though, I mean, there's poor people everywhere, and these people may have been more poor or whatever, but just to know that we did that for that little boy made me really happy to think that we could have helped him so much. So now I want to talk about the mattress fund. Some of you guys graciously donated to this, and on Tuesday night in lieu of VBS, we had a ceremony to give these kids their new mattresses. One by one, the girls' names were called, and one of us would follow them back to their room with a new mattress and take their old mattress back out. Now, you must understand, some of these mattresses weren't even mattresses. Some of them were thin mats or sheets of foam that they would put in these big metal bed frames, and I don't know how it's comfortable to sleep on. The one girl that I took hers out, I picked it up, and it was like just springs inside of a mattress. Like, I couldn't carry it. It was so heavy. I don't know how she slept on it, but it was, to give them those mattresses and to see what they had been sleeping on was just really cool. After we distributed the girls, we walked about a quarter of a mile with our mattresses to where the boys lived and gave them to the boys. And the one little boy who I gave his mattress to, he had this big metal bed frame, and he had a mat about this thin that he was sleeping on. And we were giving them nice, thick, new mattresses that they were so excited. Like, to see the looks on their faces, it was so cool. But I hope you guys realize that the kids were beyond grateful for their nice new beds to sleep in. The head of the orphanage said when we said that we were going to raise money to get the kids mattresses, he didn't really think we'd follow through, because people were just like, oh, we're going to help you do this, and then they never did. When we showed up with $6,000 for them to buy new mattresses for the kids, he didn't know what to say. He couldn't believe that we'd actually done it. So I want to thank you guys who contributed, because these kids, I'm sure, are really enjoying their new beds. And I want to leave you with these verses that are found in Luke 4:17 through 19. And he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah, and when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord." So I hope you guys realize through all this that we had an incredible experience, not just having fun doing stuff, but being able to help these kids and the people, because we're so much more fortunate than they are. And we may think that we don't have a lot of stuff, but when you see the stuff that they had, it really opens your eyes. And everybody says mission trips change your life, all that, but I mean, as you guys know, I was pretty nervous to go, but it was amazing to see what people live with and are happy with. And then when we give them the mattresses, or even like a pen and a highlighter, like, we'd be like, oh cool, I can do my schoolwork with this. But they were so excited about that. Just the little things that made them so happy. It made me think, with all the stuff I had back in the States, why am I complaining? So thank you guys for listening to us. I think, do we have one more video to play? We're going to play one more video before we close.
You have to turn on the volume.
A restless generation, we're turning over every stone, hoping to find salvation in a world that's left us cold. Can we get back to the altar, back to the arms of our first love? There's only one way to the Father, and He's calling out to us. To the captive it looks like freedom, to the orphan it feels like home, to the skeptic it might sound crazy to believe in a God who loves. In a world where our hearts are breaking and we're lost in the mess we've made, like a blinding light in the dead of night, it's the gospel that makes a way. It's the gospel that makes a way. It's the cure for our condition, it's the good news for us all. It's greater than religion, it's the power of the cross. So can we get back to the altar, back to the arms of our first love? There's only one way to the Father, and He's calling out to us. To the captive it looks like freedom, to the orphan it feels like home, to the skeptic it might sound crazy to believe in a God who loves. In a world where our hearts are breaking and we're lost in the mess we've made, like a blinding light in the dead of night, it's the gospel that makes a way. 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 It's the gospel that makes a way.
All right, well, that was amazing. What do you guys think? Thank you, Eli, Emily, and Lilly, for sharing your experiences and giving your testimony regarding your trip. I'm sure it touched your life, and I know it touched others too. We will have our closing song, which will be number 338. If you'll please stand.
Redeem, how I love to proclaim Him, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, redeemed through His infinite mercy, His child, and forever I am. Redeem, redeem, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, redeem, how I love to proclaim it, His child, and forever I am. I think of my blessed Redeemer,